Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat? All right, let me start first of all with your reaction on not only the signing, but also the timing and how it all came together based on what you've been able to gather so far.
All right. Well, yeah, I'll do a couple things. First of all, just reacting to the deal on its own. My reaction back in January, when I saw the Raiders are going to look to trade Derek Carr. Here's what's left on his deal, and you got to get a pick to get him. I was like, ooh, that seems really steep. Like a pick and all that money. And so I was just as hesitant as probably anybody who is not completely sold on Derek Carr is. But when you compare, all right, maybe he's worth a mid-round pick, maybe he's worth $38 million a year, the fact that they now get him without having to trade any picks, and really it's just $30 million a year over the first 2 years with sort of like a $40 million option in year 3 and a $50 million option in year 4. I mean, it really feels like great value. So whether you were sold on Derek Carr or not, the price should not be what you don't like anymore. The price is right in line. As I just wrote, I don't know if it's up yet. We're a couple years away from that being like the 15th highest paid quarterback in the league. And I think a lot of people would rank him somewhere between the 10th and 15th best quarterback in the league. So the deal itself, I think, is great. And I think one thing that should be considered a win for the Saints is I think the only alternative that I understand why a lot of fans liked would have been sort of the full rebuild. Let's go full rebuild. But once the Saints determined that they were in it and they wanted to keep trying to win, you have to consider this as a win, because this was their number one target, their number one guy, their plan A. They didn't have a good plan B. They were competing against a division rival in Carolina, and they went and got their guy. And I think that's a big win for this team. It shows that a top quarterback who had all these options, he liked what they were selling him. I think the team and the quarterback both believe that they should go and win this division now.
Yeah, he objectively makes them better than any other option, right? Derek Carr is better than Andy Dalton or Jameis or a rookie. He is an objectively better option. I think the big question is, what is their ceiling with the team as it's constructed? So let's talk a little bit about how they proceed now. So they got their quarterback. Mike, what else do they have to do? Okay, let's start with just getting within cap compliance. What else can we expect for them to get within cap compliance?
Oh, that they can do with restructures. We put pencil to paper, and we could get them $30 million under the cap without cutting anybody if they didn't want to. We know they are going to cut Jameis Winston. They might not actually cut Michael Thomas, but they are done with Michael Thomas's old contract. If they re-sign him, it'll be like they're signing a new free agent, because it'll be a brand new deal. And Carr himself, his first year cap number is only going to be $7 million. So yes, of course, that means cap dollars waiting for them in the future, but no different than any other year with this team. I mean, and frankly, we probably would have been talking about how it was no big deal if it wasn't for COVID. It's turned into a big deal, but we know it'll never stop them from being competitive. So what they have to do next, I don't see any other positions where they have to go and spend big in free agency. I think whether it's keeping Michael Thomas or replacing Michael Thomas, I think they will spend on that mid-tier pass catcher, somebody that is the big physical, contested catch pass catcher, wide receiver, or tight end. They've made it clear they need that in this offense to complement Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed and Juwan Johnson. And then all the other needs, I think, could become draft needs, and now you don't have to use a draft pick on a quarterback. So 29, 40, 71, defensive tackle and the defensive line in general, and then a running back. A running back is a must at some point this offseason, but those are needs I think you can address in the draft.
Totally agree on all fronts there. Mike Triplett, he's on Twitter at Mike Triplett, neworleans.football. Let's go back to Mike Thomas for a second. So we know they redid his deal. I believe it's March 17th. If he's due a roster bonus, it's a 8-figure roster bonus. Mike, what is it? 30?
Yeah. So he he has like a $200,000 roster bonus due on the first day of the league year. So if they're going to tear up that deal, they'll do it before the first day of the league year. And then on the third day of the league year, it's like a $21 million bonus for next year becomes fully guaranteed. So basically that deal's dead. They're going to cut him,
right.
And tear up that deal no matter what. The only way he stays on the team is if he agrees to a brand new deal, just as he would as a free agent.
Got it.
1 year, $10 million with incentives, something like that.
So they'd cut him and then sign him to a new contract, which of course they're not going to pay him that enormous roster bonus on March 17th. Exactly. So they cut him, re-sign him. Exactly. Do you think there's an appetite there?
More than I would have guessed before I went to Indianapolis last week. I was pretty surprised that, I thought we were going to find out, it's just a formality. It's going to be done in the next few days. But I think there is interest on both sides, it sounds like. Now, they're not going to overpay for him. They do act as though they have a team that has to be careful with their spending. They don't ever let the cap stop them from doing what they want to do, but it makes them put a very judicious eye on every move they make. And a guy who's been hurt for 3 straight years is a tough sell. So they are going to have to really like the price. And if another team has a lot of money to throw around and wants to take that gamble because of his potential, they can be outbid for him. But, we saw Michael Thomas's reaction on social media to the quarterback the Saints just signed, and it sure sounds like he wouldn't mind playing with him. And it's exactly what this offense needs. So, I'd embrace it if they get him at the right price, and if it's, low on guarantees and high on incentives. That's probably the kind of deal he's going to have to sign no matter where he goes.
Let's go to I'm interested in mostly what the roster around Derek Carr is going to look like. Because, and for those who might just be joining us, my general feel on this, Mike, is Derek Carr makes you better. That's not even a question. He's better than any option you had, but I don't think you're winning a Super Bowl with Derek Carr, and I think he's going to progressively get worse throughout his contract. That's my opinion, but I think we're seeing a declining player who's going to continue declining as his contract number goes up, so I don't like that. You and I were tweeting back and forth a little bit, so my point essentially is I don't like how the Saints sometimes have handled cap and free agency, and this only puts them in more of an issue.
Sure.
Give me your sense of the numbers and what this does to the Saints. We talked about the contract for Carr, but what it does to the Saints' contract situation or cap situation as a whole.
Well, a couple different conversations there. So, yes, on Twitter, I challenged you to have this conversation today because the one argument that has bugged me, I do not mind if people don't like the way the Saints manage the cap. It's you play with fire, and if something like COVID happens, you really get burned. And, it feels like you're always spending every offseason getting under the cap. And, you envy the team. Look what the Atlanta Falcons just did. The Atlanta Falcons, with Terry Fontenot, just took an exact opposite approach. They were way over the cap 2 years ago. Now they're way under it. They traded away Matt Ryan, traded away Julio Jones, said, we want to start over, start fresh. That's an approach you can choose. But what I don't like is when people say, look what happened. This is what you said. They couldn't afford to re-sign Trey Hendrickson, and they couldn't afford to re-sign Marcus Williams because of how they managed the cap. And I balk at that because the reason the Saints are here is because all the money they've spent in the last 8 years has been nothing but re-signing great players. I mean, Michael Thomas costs $20 million a year. Ryan Ramczyk costs $20 million a year. Marshawn Lattimore costs $20 million a year. Cam Jordan, $18 million a year. DeMario, $15 million a year. Alvin Kamara, $15 million a year. Teron Armstead for a while was costing $15 million a year. They just happen to have a lot of Drew Brees for many of those years. That's who they were re-signing. I mean, we're way past the Kobe Fleener, Jarris Bird, Brandon Browner mistakes.
Go ahead, please.
There hasn't been. I mean, it'd be great if you could go back and say, well, they shouldn't have re-signed Pete. Yeah, I get it, but maybe Taysom Hill, maybe David Onyemata didn't make as much money, but they re-signed all their best players. So the only way they could have afforded to keep Trey Hendrickson and Marcus Williams was to pick 2 other of those guys not to re-sign.
Right.
They're not out there just missing all the time. So I don't have a problem with anyone they've spent their money on for the last 8 years. But so cap management also comes down to, they've had one of the best rosters in the NFL, and it's really It's really hard to keep a roster like that together, as they've proven. I don't see any other way they could have, afforded to keep all those people without doing it the way they've done it. So that's my only complaint. But yeah, obviously you can argue against that. And if they don't hit on a couple more draft classes and they let Marcus Davenport go, then they won't have this problem in the next generation. So no one will have to argue it. But as far as what they're going to do to keep going, the one thing they've never done to get under the cap is they've never done that. Well, this means we have to cut Matt Ryan and Julio Jones. That's not how they do it. They do it a bunch of other ways. But they say these are our top 10 guys, and we're keeping our top 10 guys. And I fully expect that to continue this year, too.
So this is why Twitter is not a great place for elaborative debate often. It's hard to provide context. I've said many times, I understand to have nice things, you have to spend money. And the reason, Mike, and I think you would agree with this, the reason the Saints have the opportunity to do the cap restructures is because they have ownership that's willing to spend. They're willing to cut a giant bonus check to be able to immediately to spread cap money out throughout the years. Like, they have an ownership group that's willing to spend. What they've done poorly at times is decide who to pay. Not all the time, but in letting Trey Hendrickson walk and probably investing a little more, thinking Marcus Davenport might be the guy, or because they've gotten into a tough situation. Like the per year number on Marcus Williams wasn't very different. Correct me if I think the years were different, but the per year number wasn't too different in Baltimore, so maybe what New Orleans was offering. And sometimes you get hamstrung, and maybe you could, when you have tons of cash, you can be a little more loose with your spending, to be maybe as rigid. Does that make sense?
No, I mean, you're right, but that's, they didn't let anyone out of this building for a long time. But before Trey Hendrickson, and Hendrickson was also a personnel decision. Hendrickson, they incorrectly didn't believe in. They saw him not succeed for 3 years, and they didn't believe it when he finally did. They missed on that one. They'll admit it now.
Sure.
But before Trey Hendrickson and Marcus Williams and Teron Armstead these last couple of years, and a lot of that was COVID related. They didn't have what they wanted to work with. It's been a long time since they let someone out of this building that you're like, how'd they let that guy go? You got to go all the way back to Malcolm Jenkins in 2014, I think.
Von Bell?
Yeah, a little bit, but that wasn't, that again wasn't, we can't afford him. He was cheap. They actually re-signed Malcolm Jenkins that year for more than Von Bell got, I think.
I know.
So yeah, you can disagree with personnel decisions, but they, they've never let the cap stop them from keeping the players they want to keep, I guess, is the point. Until recently. COVID definitely threw them for a loop. There's no question about it. But even after COVID, they've re-signed Kamara, DeMario, Lattimore, and now Derek Carr. So they do not let it be much of a barrier to them.
Radio convo greater than Twitter debate. Let's make sure we say that with context. All right, he's on Twitter at Mike Triplett. Before you go, will the New Orleans? Yes, go ahead.
Well, hold on. Let me answer one more part of your question, because I agree with you on the ceiling. Me defending their cap spending, me defending signing Derek Carr. They're still going to be projected to win 9.5, 10 games this year. And that's fair. I mean, you can choose whether you like that or not. But if you're trying to win, I like the moves they made. But I am not pretending. I'd say best case scenario, they're what the Vikings have been with Kirk Cousins in recent seasons. It's been a lot of 8-win seasons in there. There was a 12-win season this year. That's what we're talking about. We're not saying they are now going to become the Matthew Stafford Rams.
That has been my point. I would people have heard my opinion. Let me get yours. Will the Saints win a Super Bowl with Derek Carr?
I'm going to say no, but I think you can win a Super Bowl with Derek Carr. I think if they had signed Derek Carr with their 2017 roster, I would say yes. My only concern is I don't love the future of this roster. I would rank Cameron Jordan and DeMario Davis and Alvin Kamara as 3 of their probably 6 top players, and those guys don't have a lot of miles left. So I think Derek Carr, I like going for a Derek Carr. I want to have a top 12 to 15 quarterback. I think that's more important than anything else. But I don't know how much I love pieces 2 through 53 over the long term. So you definitely would bet against it, I think, unless they're going to have their next version of the 2017 draft class.
He's on Twitter at Mike Triplett. Read us up at neworleans.football. Great time to do it now with this news. And, of course, the league year about to start and the draft on the horizon, neworleans.football. Mike, you're the best. We appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.